If you like this video, make sure to subscribe to our channel and hit the notification bell icon to get the latest updates.
Components. You can find here something called Visual Force components. Now, what is this Visual Force component? So you may have at times some code pieces that you may be using very frequently. Some UI things that you may be using very frequently. Something, it could be anything, and that could make your task way a lot easier. And when it is so, you can make use of this this Visual Force component. Let's say, for example, you are having, let's say, for example, there's a website, and the website has got several pages. Now, in this pages, the body will remain same, but the system data, I mean, the system within itself, it may be different. The header and the footer, that may remain same, but the body every time, that will be different. So then, should I create this header and footer time and again for every page? Is it really needed? The answer is no, you don't need it. Instead, what you can do is you can make use of these components here in Salesforce. So what these components allow you to do? They allow you to make use of these quick components, which can be just deployed with very simple code written there, and as a result, what you can do is you can reuse those components time and again. Let's say, for example, I have created a component, and that component is a header. So instead of writing that header time and again, I can make use of the reference of that header, and I can reuse it as and when, wherever we want. So instead of writing the whole header or footer code time and again, what I would be doing is I'll be just creating this this header, and I'll be making use of it. So I'll be referring to this component and header. I'll be referring to another component in footer. When I have both these components in place, I'll make use of it and I'll work with that. And that's it. My task will be done. Right. So this is how you can make use of several other tools here. You can make use of your tools for referring to these, these controllers or components here. So what components enable you to do? So components enable you to make use of some of the wonderful stuffs with the help of just creating that once and then reusing them time and again. So to reuse, you don't need anything, but just refer to the given component at any point in time. So if you have created a component, all that you need to do is to just refer it. The moment it is there, you can make use of it, and that will be displaying your data accordingly. Right? For example, let me show you here. So where do you find these components? Let me first create it. So this is your class 26, and we are looking at components. Sorry. Components. Okay, you can have a look at the, you will find, so whatever we are studying, they are all present in that 3000 pages Apex guide that I had shared with you. So you can even look out for that there. So components, they are used, they are some reusable piece of codes, reusable code that you can reuse time and again. And for this reusable code, all you need to do is to design a component. For that component to design, apex component, in between these tags you write and you create a component. And while you create a component, how do you go for it? So you go to setup, you go to develop, and you go to components. Right? And so let's have a look. So you go to develop, here, and you have Visualforce components. Let me just write it the way it is. So this is a Visualforce component that you work with. Now, while you have this Visualforce component, you have created a component here. I've created a component here. To create a component, okay, let me first create a simple one. So first you go to the component itself, new. And if you look at this, this is also Visualforce page, a simple Visualforce page which has got Apex component and Apex component at the end. Let me place here some simple text, component data, and I'm creating here component. I'm placing here a name, my component. So when I write like this and if I save it, I can save this here. So this is my component data. So when I have created it, I can create an Apex page to refer it as well. So I'll be creating here Apex and then my component demo. So I have a VF page now in which if I want to refer to my component, I can easily do that. Like this is my code. You can see this. Let me increase the size. This is a simple code piece which is there. Now, if I want to include a component here, all that I need to do is to write C colon followed by the name of component. Like I have here my component. So that's it. Once I do this and if I save, I'm good enough to make use of this component. If you see here, there's this component data. Let me place this component in a paragraph tag. So when I write this and save, so this is the component data that is appearing from the component. So now that's now just like, I mean, if there was only one line of code, that's why it appeared like this. But even if there are more lines of code, there is more code that is added to it. All you need to do is to just make use of this component that is written here. Other than that, you don't need anything. You just can refer to it directly from this area, right? So that's what is about a component. If at any point in time you're looking at a component, you just have to mention the C colon, the name of the component that is there, right? Let me quickly paste this code that's there. So to write a component, you're writing it within this tag. That is this component code. And once you have written a component, if you want to reference that component in a VF page, that's how you can do it. Let me just close this thing. Yeah, so this was just how to refer the component. Now components do have various properties. Like if you want to refer a component, the components can be referred in various ways. So one is, if you see this component that we created right now, it's not having anything, any data, anything. It's just one line of code. But a component can be a little more, a little more complicated. Like how? So for example, I have here a record display. This is my component name. And for this component, I have added an attribute. Now this attribute, it will be more like a parameter. So at times this may happen that we may need to send in parameter to my components. And to do that component, to send the parameters to a component, it's very simple. All you need to do is Apex colon attribute and then the name equal to record. Now this is the name of the component that I'm going to make use of. I'll be having a description type which is going to hold object and the required means it is mandatory. So if I want to pass some attribute, I want to make sure that my some attribute is passed, some data is passed through this, I can pass it this way. So if there is an attribute that is passed, so to refer to such a code, I have this component present here. To refer to this, as you can see, I have referred C colon record display, which is nothing but the name of my component page followed by record equal to account. I'm passing some record here. Now to pass that record, I must have a record ID for account. So let's say, for example, this is the Burlington Textile Corp of America. I'll just copy this And to this component demo, I'm placing ID is equal to this and enter. And please notice now the component is displaying this entire page here. If you notice, what have I done? I'm repeating again. Let me show you what was the component. The component had this simple code that was passing an attribute. The attribute is looking for a record, which is of the type object. Okay, and it's having a name. Name is just like a name, a description that describes what it does. And I have added required is equal to true, which simply means that I am passing a mandatory attribute. So when I do that, I'm just passing it here, and as a result, I'm trying to display a page block that will show me the entire record. So record, I told you it's a type of object, is going to show entire record. It is shown it here. And within this page block, I'm showing the entire detail of the record. Now when I do this, and if I refer that in my VF page, just by the C:* name and record, within the record I'm passing the object type, that is a subject. And I pass the ID within my component name, I'll be able to see the entire record on my page. Likewise, if I do some manipulation here, like if I do related list is equal to false, and if I save it, the same thing will be reflected on my page as well. Now please see that the related lists are gone. Similarly, if I add here one more parameter, let's assume, so I'm adding a parameter and I call it str. Okay, and this is a string value, and this is of the type string. I may not make it required, so I'll just remove this mandatory stuff. And if I want to show this value, I am creating here an output page. So output block, so I say output field, and to the value I'll be passing the value that is given here, which is the name of the string, that is str. Once I do this, okay, this can only be used with the subjects. Let's try with the output label. So once it is done, and now when I'm done with this, I can save it. Since it is not mandatory, it's not going to throw me an error. But when I pass str is equal to hello world, please notice I have this available now, right? So that's what it is. You can pass as many parameters as you want, and the way it is passed, that's very simple, just like this. Through these attributes, through these component attributes, you can pass IDs, sets, subjects, all these things, right? So just give me a minute, I'll give you a link. Right. So if you have to make use of components in Salesforce, you have to first of all create a component, and to refer to that component, all you need to write is C:* the name of the component. And if there are parameters that you need to pass, all you need to write is : dot parameter, component name, and then the name of the parameter. If it is mandatory, you'll have to mandatorily pass the parameter. If not, if it is not there, you can escape passing without even passing the parameter. Now if you want to have a look at what are the custom components, what are the markups, what are all the attributes, what are the component controllers, what are custom components, you can all see them through this link. This is not part of your syllabus, this is something that you need for your interviews, right? It is not, it won't even appear in your certification, nowhere it won't appear anywhere. It's just for your reference. One more thing that I want to tell you here is that just like you write controllers for your Visualforce pages, same way you can write controllers here as well. But this will be a custom controller, and we call it custom component controller. right? Am I clear with this? Any questions, anyone? Let me add it here. You can refer to this document to see in detail how components work, how do they work, what are the different things that you can do with the component. For now, I'll just place this code. You can refer to it. So this component is your record display component. Okay, and then you're referring this same component in your VF page, right? So any questions, anyone so far? Oh, I'm sorry. That's the component here. But to make use of this component, you'll have to pass the record ID. So pass record ID in record ID for account in URLs. So then only you'll be able to test. Please notice this thing. So that's what is here. And as I was telling you, you can make use of controllers in component. But you cannot make use of any standard controller. What you can do is you can make use of custom controllers only. So custom controllers can be made use in components. All right. So any questions, anyone? Any doubts? Anything that's not clear? Okay. So if the things are clear, let's move ahead. Just give me 1 minute. Let me just save this document. Okay. So this is about components. Components are some reusable pieces of code that you can reuse time and again. Now next to this, you have something called custom settings in Salesforce. Let's have a look at that. So let's first understand what is it and related problem statement. I'm repeating again. So whatever we are studying today, it is not part of your certification. Neither it's going to be asked in any in any of the things. I mean, it can be asked only in interviews. In interviews or in projects, you will be making rapid use of them. They are all for increasing your productivity in order to increase your efficiency, code optimizing, and best practices. So this is what we are talking about today. In the same way, we have something called, we may have a requirement where I told you many times this thing that we should not hard code anything. Nothing should be hard coded, not even the page labels. I mean, so far, if you have noticed, I have hardly written anywhere any code. Like even here, it was an output label and it was this str, which was coming basically from this component somewhere. Yeah, from here. So so what I want to tell you is we should not even we should not code for anything which is hard coded, whether it be even your UI. So nothing should be hard coded. That's a prime thing which we need. And at times it becomes more and more critical when we would like to switch from one user to another, from one language to another. For example, if you remember, I had told you many times that you may have a multilingual organization. Now let me give you a question here. So you're a multilingual organization and what you want is that for different users there are different languages. So one may be knowing French, one may be knowing Italian, another one may be knowing some other language. And what you want is that the entire front end should change according to who is using it. At the same time, you're also using various Visualforce pages and standard pages as well. Right? So how can you achieve this? Right? Just try to answer this question. I'm repeating again. You're a multilingual organization. You need different UI for different users according to the language preferences that they have set. So what is it that you can do? Alright, so if you had noticed to achieve such a requirement, what you need is we'll go to the user and we'll change the language. But by default, system can only translate all whatever is provided by Salesforce. All out of box front end labels, things, tabs, etc. Everything will change. But the Visualforce pages that you are creating, their labels that won't change. And you can imagine if there are 11 different languages, to translate it into 11 different pages. This means 11 different pages in system for a one single page. So do you think it's a good option? No, right? So to make sure that we do not have such issues, we avoid hard coding in anything. Even in front end, whenever it is even a Visualforce page, we avoid making use of something which is hard coded. So even for your Visualforce pages, you're not hard coding anything. What rather you make use of is something that is called custom labels. Custom label. So as I told you, custom label, they make use of front end, they make use of the things that allow you to create UI which is not UI which is dynamic, which is not hard coded, rather not hard coded. So what is meant by this? So in a UI which is not hard coded, you will be replacing everything with this label. Let me show you how to do that. So to create it, you will go to setup, you will go to create, and you will go to custom label. Let me show you this. So you will go to setup, you will go to create, and you will go to custom labels. So once you will navigate to the custom label, you can go ahead and you can start creating your custom labels from here. You can click on new custom label and you can create your custom label from this area. Like for example, we are saying organization name. Let's assume this is the organization name. You want to capture the organization name. And here it is ZaranTech, let's assume. So now you save it. And if I want to refer to this in my VF pages, let me create quickly a VF page. Sorry. Okay, we cannot have dot, sorry. Let me create it again. So the page is created. We can navigate to the page. And this is our page that you can see. And I want here to make use of the custom label. Now, custom labels, they can be referenced both in code, in Apex, as well as in Visualforce pages. So if I have to refer to this in a VF page, so I'll say this is in VF page. So custom labels can be referenced in a VF page directly using the formula fields. So you can write curly brackets, exclamation mark, but then you'll have to add sign dollar followed by label dot the name of the custom label. Like here, you can see that the custom label name is organization underscore name. I'm talking about the names field, so capture the name field and just write it here. And when you save it this time, you can see that your value got replaced here. Now think about this one more time. So this VF page I have hard coded. If you see here, it's hard coded. While this thing, it is not hard coded. Now let's have a look. So ZaranTech, let me do one more thing. Let me replace here. Let me do one thing here. Let me go back and let's get the Google Translator. Now, since this is a word itself, it won't get translated. Let me get something which is a text. So this is a custom label. So this is when we write it in English, right? So let me just copy this. And here instead of this ZaranTech, I'm adding this along with this. So I have added this a custom label, right? And when I change here, if you notice, this is also changed. Now this also means that if I have a VF page and I have a header that I have created, or maybe a body that I have created, and there is some text that is rapidly used at some place, let's say the organization name. So I had some organization name which changed tomorrow, and it is referenced at 100 pages. Now, if it is referenced at 100 pages, I definitely will have to modify it at all those 100 locations as well, which is a tedious task. Now, if I have not hard-coded it, but rather used custom label in my code, all I need to do is to navigate to that particular custom label and change the name of it. And once that is done, we are good to make use of it. So now that, as you can see, when I changed it there, it automatically changed here as well. So which means that if there it would have got referenced at 100 pages, there also it will change simultaneously. So you can see how easy your task becomes when you are making use of custom label. Not just this. Let me show you one more thing here. So let me enable multiple languages for this org. Or rather, let's do this thing. So we have a user. Sorry. Okay. So we have user. We can see here translate. We have something called translation workbench. We are enabling translation settings. And I'm adding here support for one more language. Let's say German. So we are adding support for one more language, and I've added this user as a translator. And I'm saving it. Right? So once that is done, now if I go to custom label and if I refresh this, you can see there is additional section of it that is added for translation. Now the same text that I wrote here, I had chosen my translation language as German. So I will change this to German here. So when I choose this to German, this is a German text. I'll copy this and I will create here a new entry that will be for German. So I can write ZaranTech and then the German word. And when I save it, and now we know we have a test user. Let's go to the test user. And I log in from this test user. Oh, okay. Let's log out. Let's first change the language of this user. Right. So let's go to this user here. And to this user, what I am doing is I'm changing the language of this user. So if I go to the page, I change the language to German. And if I save it, and now just log in to this user. And this was the page, right? Let's refresh the page. I think this page is not available to the user. Let's log out from here. Just a second. Let me check the profile of this user. So this was the test user. So whenever we create a page, actually, the page should be available to the profile as well. So if a user is there and the user profile is not having access to the page, that won't be able to see. You can see it's a standard platform user. Let me just change the user license here. Let's make him system administrator only, otherwise I'll have to update the profile as well. So let's go there. Now let's log in as this user. And let's go to the new page. Just a second. So now as you can see, the translation of the text, that's already done. Now if you please notice here, this was a hard-coded value. So hard-coded value didn't got translated. But the one for which the translation was added, that value is now translated, right? So what custom labels facilitate is to make use of the Visualforce pages. And these Visualforce pages you can avoid hard coding with them. At the same time, if you want multiple language support for your Visualforce pages, you can even do that. I mean, the task of yours will be highly reduced if you make use of custom labels in that. So there is a question. Is label part of custom variable? You can say so. It's a global variable only, because when you write $, dollar is only used for custom labels. I mean global variables. Dollar. If you noticed here, when I wrote the class in the Visualforce page, here the custom label, I referenced it with $, and the $sign itself means that I'm making use of custom label, right? So is this thing clear to everyone? Any questions with respect to this? All right, so if this is clear, let's have a look at one more thing then. You can not just reference a custom label in your VF page, but you can also refer to that in your code, in Apex. So we are making use of controller here, and I'm labeling that as custom label demo CSS. That's the name of my class. And I'm just saving this thing. So the moment I save, my class will be created. I'm creating a class. And to this class, I want to add here, I want to get the value of that custom label again. So if I want to get the value of that, I'll say private. Oh, I'm so sorry. Let's write here a variable. Let's create here a variable, private string LBL. And since I want to get that on the VF page, I'll have to create here default getter and setters. You can create your custom getter and setters also, that's up to you. If you want, you can do that. I've not created it for now because I'll be referring to it through my controller. So I'll write here public constructor name. And within this constructor name, I can reference my custom label. That is, so if I want to reference my custom label, I'll have to write system.label. The name of the label. That is here, it's organization name. So you need to also write here the organization name. So once it is there, you can now save it. But now, even though you have created the variable, you have not referenced it on the VF page. So if you want to reference it, just write here from Apex, and to refer to that variable, all you need to do is again just name the variable. So it is custom label here. That variable should be used as it is, and then you can just close it. What's wrong? Okay, it should be public. It shouldn't be private, but public. Now, if you see, this is a custom label which is coming from Apex. Now, the same thing, if I log into the test user, and if I go back to the same page, that is Apex/custom label demo, you can see that this also got translated. So that's what is the advantage of it. I mean, you can refer it in your Apex class as well as in VF page. You can make use of it through the system variables. You can refer to it the way it is given here. So as I told you, it is used for UI which is not hard-coded. You can also make use of it for multi-language support. You'll have to enable the language name and then update it there. It is code once and use everywhere. And then use and update once, update in one go, right? So that's what is there. You have to just write it for once, but you'll be able to make use of it multiple times, multiple places. Now, on the same lines, okay, so any questions, anyone? Any questions, any doubts? Let me place the code properly. So meanwhile, if you have any queries, doubts, questions, you have this kind of requirements multiple times. In production, you may, it is a part of the best practice that you should not ideally hard code. And if you don't want to hard code, you will have to have something, you should have something where which can place your code, which can write your code without you writing it time and again. At the same time, if you have written it, if you have made use of it at some place, it should automatically update. Rather than you having to update it at all such places, it should automatically update. So if you make use of custom labels, if you don't do any kind of hard coding, they can, the custom labels give you this flexibility to do stuff. You can manage even without having use this custom code and things, even without making use of any data like that, right? So any questions, anyone? Anything which is not clear? Okay. So if the things are clear, let's have a look at the next stuff. Yeah, so before I move ahead, let me give you a link to refer to that. Just a minute. So it's about custom labels. I had given you a link for the Jeff Douglas blog. You can even refer to it from there. Jeff Douglas has also explained about these custom labels. You can look at that from that area as well. So this is the standard document that you can look out for how to make use of these change sets. What are what is the custom label, how to get the custom label, how to populate the custom label, and all that, right? So let me place it in the file. So meanwhile, if you have any question, please feel free to ask. Any questions, anyone? Is the usage of custom labels clear to everyone? Okay. So if this is clear, let's move to the next topic. That's about custom settings. All right. So the next thing that we're looking at is about the custom settings. Custom settings. Now, custom settings, they're also like custom labels only. They also do not allow for hard coding. So if you want to skip hard coding, you can make use of custom settings. Now, when I say hard coding, I definitely mean everything that can really avoid it. Like, for example, you have a username and password pairs, and you want to insert the data for such username and password pairs in Salesforce. That's when you can make use of custom settings. They mainly have two types. You can have list type of custom setting or hierarchy type of custom settings. Now, if you remember, I had told you about hierarchical things. Hierarchy is always concerned with the user. So if you have a hierarchy custom setting, you are going to refer to user related settings. Every time the user is created and then set into the system, you will be making use of that. But when it is about a list custom setting, it's a different thing. Now, while you save custom settings in system, they're actually stored like objects. So stored like objects. And even when you refer them in your classes or in test cases, you refer them only like objects itself again. So if you have to create custom settings, how will you do that? So again, same thing, setup, setup, and then you might go to create and then custom settings. So you're going to create custom settings here. To create custom settings, again, how will you navigate? You go to setup, you search here for custom settings. Right? It's in develop, sorry. It's not in create, but in develop. So develop custom settings. Once you're in custom settings, you'll go there and you can start creating a custom setting from here. Now, while you create custom setting, as I told you, you do not make use of any hard-coded thing. So it will be all within the setting itself. Now, you can create setting whenever you want to create it with respect to user. It will be a hierarchical custom setting. But when it is supposed to be org-wide, then it is going to be a list custom setting. Right? Now, if you want to refer to this, let's create a custom setting here. So let's say I'm creating a custom setting for country and capital. Okay. And I want to create it of the list type. So I'll create it and I'll save. Right. And I can go ahead and I can create some fields here. All these field data types that we have available for objects will also be available here. Like I want to create text and next. I'll create here capital. You can add here length since it is a text value only, I'll have 255 as maximum characters. I cannot, I mean, if you want to add anything as required, mandatory, you can do that. For now, I've not done anything, I just saved it. So this is my capital. If I want to add something else, I can add it, like I'll add here a checkbox is active. This is just to explain you how it works. So you can choose accordingly. So checkbox. And I want to create something like is active. So once that is done, I can click on next and save. Right. So here also, when it saves something, it saves in the set of key and value pairs. So you actually create some data sets here. So to create data set, you go to manage and you want to create your data set now. So you will create new, and you can have various data sets. I'll name it as DS1. I can add here company name, capital, etc. So let me write it like this: India, and I'm adding New Delhi. I'm marking it is active, and I'll save it. Now let's assume I want to access this value in my code. So list settings, they cannot be accessed in code from VF page. You need to remember this: list settings cannot be accessed in page from VF. So if you want to access list setting, you'll have to code for it. So like this, there is one set of value. If I want multiple set of value to be created, I can create here. Right. If you want any more set of value, you can just click on new and create as many set of values if you want. But if I want to refer it in code, let me go back. Let me create here custom setting demo. I'll hit enter. So now this is created. Let me clear off what is not required and let me save it. Now once that is done, I can add here a controller. And to this controller, I can add the name of the class that will be acting like a controller here. So we create custom setting demo. So when we do this, we can now save and create a class corresponding to that. Now once the class is created, I can refer to this custom setting that we created as an object. And to access the values, I can access them using the help of a map. So map will be a map of string and the value of the object that we have created as a custom setting. So if you go to the custom settings now, you will find that you have created an object here. The name of that object is country. And this is the name of my API name. So I'll have to refer to this API name only. So I'll go here and this is my API name. This is a map of country capital. Right? So once I have done this, this is my API name. If I want to refer to it, I'll be referring it by this map here, and I'll create new. Sorry, create new of what? This entire thing. Right. Now, while I have created a map, I can either set all my values to map, or I can also do this that I create one single list of it. So let's assume I want to fetch all my values. I can either create a map or a set depending upon my requirement. Like for example, I want to just get the value corresponding to a country or a state, a capital or the country that I have placed. Like for example, I have added here manage, and this is my dataset 1, which is for India. Right. So when I click on India, India is my one set of value for which name is India, capital is New Delhi, and it is active. So if I want to pull some value from here, let me do it like this. So this is your map, which is going to hold all these values. If I want to get the values, this will be my values that will be placed here, and these are my keys. So if I want to get all my values, I can pull that in a list again. And this list will be this value, the list of these values. And I can write it like lst is equal to new this dot get values. So when I do this, now all my values are present here. Now when I want to get the values with respect to this, what I can do is I can pull out these values with the help of either a list or my map. Even if I pull it to map, even then it is possible. Let me show you a document and same thing. Just a minute. Like for example, this is again the same document that I was explaining you about. So if I want to pull all the values just using list, I can write the name of my value dot get all dot values. This will fetch all my values from a system. And then if I want to refer to some particular field, I can refer it by the name of that field. Again, same thing. If I want to make use of not all my values, but just the data set by its value, I can even do that. Similarly, if there are hierarchy settings, hierarchy will also pull out the value for that, for the entire thing using this. Like for example, here in this case, it has created foundation countries, and related to that, it has created some custom field called country code. To this country code, it has mapped 3 more fields: country code, state code, and state name. Country values are populated using a drop-down, likewise for the state and province field as well. For that, they have added a controller. You can make use of a controller or text box because we just want to populate the value. So to populate it, you have placed your table, you have added the code, and you have updated it. And you have even added a controller class to get all the values. The important thing is this thing that we were looking at. So if I need to pull my values, I'm just going to refer to the name of this and then get all, which will pull all my values in my map. And when I want to pull my values and see that in my list, I can pull using this. Like in our case here, while we were trying to pull the values, once we are created with the map, either you can pull them to the list, or what you can also do is that to this map of country capital, you can write the name of your parameter dot get all values, get values. So this will fetch you the entire set of values from here, or you can directly write get all, not all values, but dot get all. Now, since it is a map, get all. So since it is a map, it will be able to fetch all the data set along with the values. Now, for example, to this map, unexpected token at line 5. Why? Let me just a second. Let me just place it like this. So when I have placed it, I'm pulling all my values from the set of results. Like here, it is pulling all the values from this get values, get values. So this will be not valid in that case. I'm just pulling my values and placing it in my map. Once in my map, I have my values, and if I want some particular data, like for example, I want string of capital str, I can directly now fetch it with the help of this. So I can write map of this dot get, and what do I want to get? I want to get the value with respect to my capital. Underscore C. So just place this and save. Illegal assignment. Sorry. This is line number 5, illegal assignment. String, get capital to the string. Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Invalid field, capital for Zara 16. Failed capital. Just a second. Why is it showing invalid field? Okay, let me manipulate it a little more. Just a minute. Just a couple of minutes. I'm just trying to check what is going wrong. All right, looks like it's working now. So what have I done? I just modified a couple of things here. I created first of all a map because the data that it holds, the data is holded within a set of map in form of a key value pair. Now to hold it in a key value pair, I have added a key value for a name and capital. If you want to get more fields, you can add it here. That's not a problem. You can add here as many fields as you want. And every time to get the value, to display it onto the front end, all you need to do is to refer to the name of your label, custom setting. Here is the API name, which is nothing but the API name for the object. You can treat it as an API name for the object. You can copy this API name and this you can create as an object list from where we can fetch the value. Now once you have fetched the value, you can make use of the getter and setters to fetch the value, and you can make use of the map as well. Map will fetch the string and then the values related to that particular object. The string will be pulling in the name of the dataset. Like here the name of the dataset was India, so that is pulled, and then it will fetch all the values here, which will also pull the other fields from this and keep it in your map. Now while you want to fetch the values, that is all associated values with this, you can write map.values and it will fetch the rest of the values here. Now when you want to make use of this in your VF page, all you need to do is to create the page block table and to refer to that list of values that are given here. That is added. You have added a variable that will help you to iterate over it. You have got the name, you have got the capital. Even if you want a third field that was here for is checked, even if you want to get that, let me just see what's the API name. It is active. You want to get this, sorry, just add it here and save. So that the third value will always also be retrieved. Let me just modify here the name. Okay, no, that's fine. So yeah, so this is how you can fetch the value for your entire code from your settings. Now, if there are multiple set of values, even that will be fetched through this. If you want to fetch out individual values only, you can even do that, right? So custom setting, they even help you to fetch some data dynamically. Now here, when will you use this? So you know, in web services, at times to create some web service, you may need some username methods, user methods, or you may need some username and passwords. Now you will have to individually go to each one of these to manipulate, which may not be a good idea. So to avoid it, to avoid any kind of hard coding, at times you may need some username and password to trigger some web service. So, and these passwords may change in future. Now, what advantage do these custom settings or custom labels offer to you is that you don't need to touch your code at all. I mean, you just design your logic at once and you are done. And from next time onwards, you won't need to touch your code. Like I'll give you an example. Recently I wrote a batch class. Now the batch class was for updating. So I'll just write it. That would help you to understand the scenario better. Let me first copy paste this entire code. Let me get you the code first. What you have to do is no one will explicitly tell you that now you need to make use of custom setting or custom page. You yourself need to understand that now you can make use of custom setting or custom labels in your code, right? So be sure of this. Just add it here. So let me explain you where had we used it. Sorry, Control Z. So then what happened is I had a requirement wherein we have to make use of content. We talked about content if in libraries, files, if you remember. So there was a requirement that content had a lookup for account, and we had something that we had then done to update some fields on content from this account. Now we have a requirement wherein we were supposed to, whenever there was an update in account, I was supposed to update it on content as well. Now, this was practically not possible until unless we don't write a batch script, because of the reason that I didn't want to write my trigger over account, and at the same time content do not understand any trigger. There are certain operations that are ignored by Salesforce. So one such operation is trigger on content. So if this is also ignored, it won't work. So then what we did is we wrote a batch class. And in that we wrote a batch class which will run a batch job to update all my content on the basis of the last time change of my accounts. Now we had another requirement where I can go ahead and I can set up before how many hours had the content change, and then it should update. Like for example, I wanted that within last 2 hours, whatever change, it should get updated. Within last 10 hours, whatever change, it should get updated. Like that, I should be able to dynamically update number of hours. Now you think it from the perspective of your production. In production, the code that you write, that is not allowed to be modified. So you cannot modify your code unless you don't do the deployment. And doing the deployment means it's not possible because everything is in production. It's not a test environment, but a production environment. So for a production environment, you need some dynamic thing wherein you can directly go, you can change, and your code should start behaving likewise. One way is that you start coding for it in 1 hour, after 2 hours, after 3 hours, and you start calling it. But that's a very bad way of code. I may have a requirement where I may like to run it for 365. So 1 year before, I would like to run it for 1 year before. So does that mean that I will have to include that case in my code as well? The answer is no, it's not needed. What instead I did was I added a custom setting in my code. I added a custom setting, and in that custom setting, I had added a provision to add number of hours before which it will consider. Like if I enter that 10 hours before through the custom setting, since it is a custom setting, anyone can modify even in production. It's just a point and click thing. So anyone can go ahead and they can click on edit. They can edit the number of hours from 10, 12, 20, 100, whatever they want to. And then my query that will internally make use of this custom setting, and it will fire my update. You can see how easy the task has become. Now I don't need to do the deployment again and again. So in all such cases where you want the things to remain dynamic, there you make use of the custom settings or custom labels. Am I clear with this? Any questions, anyone? Okay, so this was about list type of custom setting. We talked about hierarchy as well. I'll show you quickly how to create a hierarchical setting. Okay, let me give you this link as well. This is also important. You can refer to this. Now, with respect to this, the one thing that I want to tell you is hierarchy settings have a very strong implementation, a very strong application. Let me quickly show you this thing. First of all, how to create it. If I go to my custom settings, and if I start creating a new setting, let's say, for example, I want to set some hierarchical settings. So I have now saved it, and I want to set it for some user or profile. I can click on some custom field. Let's assume I want a checkbox, and I want to keep it is available. I mean, I'm just giving you an example. You can check it. You can create anything of your choice, right? Now, once I have created it, now when I want to create my data set, I'll again go to manage, and I can create my data set from here. But when I click on new, please notice it's a profile and the user which is also there. So which means that I can set my custom setting for a particular profile or a user. So if I want to say that is this particular profile is active, right? So this custom setting is saved in my system. Likewise, I can add various things. So what are the application of this type of custom setting? If you go back to the Jeff Douglas blog, I'd like you to search for it and just check about this custom setting and check there for deployment especially. So what happens during deployment is that when you're doing a deployment to a production environment, everything there, it will not let you do anything else during that moment. Actually, all the records get logged for that thing. You know that whenever there are database operations going on, the records get logged, right? Same concepts are applicable in Salesforce as well. So here also the records get logged for some specified period of time. So here also the records will be logged. And now when the records will be logged, and if you want to make use of those records, all that you need to do is to stop the deployment, which is not possible. So deployment anyways will go on, but the record should not be locked. And if you want to make use of this, so you can make use of these custom settings, which can enable or which can help you ignore the code or the workflows or anything wherever you add it, to ignore that thing with the help of custom setting. I'm repeating again, you want that code should not be locking anything. At the same time, what you can do is, okay, what happens basically whenever you run sharing rules or whenever you run triggers, then it gets locked. Now, if you want to escape running these things, ideally whenever you do deployment, these things are automatically running in the background for your code. But you want to skip that. To skip that, for certain users, you can add these custom settings which are of hierarchical type. How? So you will make a setting where you will say is active is equal to true or false for a particular user or profile. So let's say I do it for a user. So let me do this. I am making it for a user, and this user is my own user, right? And I'm unchecking this, which means that this should not work. This is inactive. Okay, I'll save it. And in my code, I can place this custom setting. Let me give you an example here. So in my code, I'm placing a custom setting like if, let's say custom setting dot is active. If this is true, then you run this code, or else it will skip. So let's assume if it is my trigger, and within my trigger, I place this condition that if it is active, then only you run my code. So then before I do my deployment, I will get this thing unchecked. The moment it will be unchecked, it will skip all whatever is written in between, right? So in turn, what is happening for other users, this will be active. They will be able to run it. But for my user who is doing the deployment, for them, it is not working. It is not active. And as a result, nothing will run, nothing will hang, and you will be able to do it. You will be able to do the deployment in real time without having zero downtime. Sorry, without having any downtime. Is this thing clear to everyone? I mean, this is very important. I'll give you time to think on it. If you want to think over it, please think again. It's a very important concept where we are saying that we are achieving zero downtime. You may have a question, why should I have a zero downtime? So if you want to know that, just think of scenarios where it's a maintenance project, or maybe there is some bug that you need to fix for a live environment. Now the bug is required to be fixed for a live environment. You cannot wait to wait for the next downtime. You have to do it as soon as possible, but you cannot shut down the system. right? Is it clear to everyone? Sure. This custom setting thing, I mean, especially this hierarchical one, this is used for a very important purpose, that's for deployment. So when we do a hierarchical setting, we can do it for users as well as for profiles. Now, this kind of setting is mostly used at the time of deployment when we want to skip executing some things like triggers, workflows, assignment rules, auto response. We want that the deployment should happen, but at the same time, nothing should run. So for that, what we can do, we can create a setting in our custom settings where we can create a checkbox which says is true or is false. And accordingly, I can update my code at all the places like in workflows, formulas, expressions, or maybe in my code here to escape all these things. So if for a particular user, what will happen is the particular user's custom setting will be in place. It will check if it is active. If it is active for that very user who is running the code, for him, these things will not run. But for the other users who are executing it, it will be active. Because if you have noticed here, we have organization level value. So if for organization level value, I set it as active, then for everyone else, this will be active. So everyone else will be able to run this code. But for me, who is a user, who is having this name, this user will not be able to run it since this is active is unchecked for this particular user here. And as a result, nothing will run, no triggers, no workflows, nothing. Wherever I have placed this check wherever I have placed, and all such places the things will not be running, the code will not be working. Am I clear with this? Any questions, anyone? All right. Okay. If you need time, you can go through this. I'll give you a couple of minutes. We'll resume in a couple of minutes and then we'll talk more on that front. So just go through these concepts. These are important ones, and they're defined a lot of applications in your real-time project where you don't want to do any kind of hard coding and you want to reuse your data and values as much as possible. So just go through that, think about it, and read about that through Jeff Douglas' blog. He's given a very good blog on that front. So you will be able to understand the most important application of these things. Any questions, doubts? All right. So if we do not have any questions, we'll move to the next thing. Let me find out what we can next look at. Okay. So we have something that's called repeat. Repeat. It's like your page block only. It holds the value just like a page block, but just that there's a minor difference. Let me quickly show you that. So we are talking about repeat. So we're going to talk about repeat, which is almost like your Visualforce page blocks that you have. So with the help of page blocks, how we can add values in a tabular format, the same way repeat also works. But the way repeat works is a little different. It's different in the context that it allows the user to add the repeated values in form of bulleted or non-bulleted list. Let me show you this. Just 1 second. Let me get the contact first. All right. Now please have a look. So what is this about? If you carefully look at this one, I have made use of a standard controller called contact. If you look at the contact has several cases attached to it. There are 13 cases in the list. Now, if you look at here, it's apex colon repeat, and I have repeated over contact.cases. Whenever I need to find out the related list, I can write it like in plural form, contact.cases. And then I'm iterating with the help of the variable cx. Now, whenever I need to fetch my values, all I need to do is cx dot the field name. If you can see, this value is not having any tabular format, no spaces, nothing. If you want to arrange space by yourself, you can do that. You can create your own tabular table to create it. Otherwise, it will just give you the result in form of an unbulleted list. So whatever you will be writing in between this repeat, that will be repeated n number of times. Or if you would like to place some HTML tags like what we had used in our Visualforce pages, like that if you want to place, you can definitely do that. But otherwise, by default, all these values will be coming up in form of an unbulleted list. So that's what is about repeat. You can make use of this repeat tag to add as many data or things or structures in place the way you want. So any questions, anyone? Any questions here with respect to repeat? Okay, if there are no questions, okay. All right, so these are some of the basic things that we have looked at today. I have to explain a couple of more topics, that is about process builder and lightning related stuff that will be starting off with tomorrow. Today we cannot take it. It will take a little more time. It's a long topic, and we'll take that tomorrow to complete it. Meanwhile, with respect to these topics that we studied today, like we talked about components, we talked about repeat, we talked about custom labels and custom settings. If we have any questions, please feel free to ask. These the custom labels, settings, component, they're all for increasing your productivity, increasing the reusability of the code. So if there is anything that you are not clear about, please feel free to ask. Any questions, anyone? All right. Okay. So before you, okay, one thing I wanted to ask about, have you gone through the assignments that are posted so far, everyone? Have you gone through all the assignments that are posted so far? If you have any doubts with that assignments, any question that's not clear, how to implement it, or if you need some documentation on some topic, some important stuff, if you want to know, if you want to understand. Okay, seems you don't have anything. Okay, so please what you can do is just try to go through this entire topic. It is important, especially the custom settings and the things. You need to you need to check for this in your documents. Sorry, you need to go for this entire topic with respect to your deployment perspective as well. Just check with respect to deployment. You can look through the blog that I was telling you about, the Jeff Douglas blog. Jeff Douglas blog has given a detailed explanation about the usage of this in deployment. I mean, it's exactly same as what I have explained you, but if you still want to relook that, please go ahead and have a look. It's a very important application which you are going to use rapidly in your projects. So most of the projects, whenever we work with it, we make extensive use of these custom settings and custom labels. There's also something new which has appeared these days that's called metadata. sorry, not metadata. It's called custom. Just a second. Let me just search for it. Yeah, so there are some custom metadata types. There are also some of the new features that are enabled these days, and you can even make use of it. So this also you can create with your setup object, and you are creating metadata rather than data. Now, while you create metadata, you don't need to recreate them. Like what happens with case of like say for example, custom labels or custom setting, whatever data you want to feed in, like you have created right now the data set. While you do the deployment in using your change set, your data will not be sent from one environment to other. You'll have to go ahead and manually enter it. But while you create it with the help of custom metadata, the way you create it is again very simple. Like for example, here you're creating account setting. So let's assume you're creating account setting. So while you're creating account setting, just save it. So while you're creating account settings, you can add here custom fields, you can add here validation rules. All this that you did earlier will be valid even now. And if you want to create any kind of particular setting here, like you want to add some account name or label, let's say for example, test, save it. For this will be one setting for you. Right now you're not created many fields. Once you'll start creating more fields, that will be added as a part of this. This is similar to your data set. So this data set will also be created. Now the only difference between a custom setting and this metadata is that you don't need to deploy the data along with it. The moment you will send it from one environment to other, the data will also be sent along with that. That's the only difference, and this is more usable component. But in your previous projects, at all the, I mean, if you look at some of the previous projects, they'll be rapidly making use of the custom settings and custom labels. But this is one more component which has been recently released. So this also we can make use of if you need. They behave exactly the same way the custom settings do, and they are called custom metadata. So just search here for metadata, you'll be able to find it. It's metadata. So custom metadata types. That's called custom metadata types. If you read through this, it also says the same thing. They enable you to create your own setup objects whose records are metadata rather than data. They are typically used to define application configurations that need to be migrated from one environment to other or packaged or installed. Same thing, I mean, no difference at all. It's just that during the deployment, this metadata will also be sent along with the values. While one with the custom setting, you'll have to manually enter. So rather than building the apps from data records and custom object or custom settings, you can create custom metadata types and metadata records with all the manageability that comes with metadata, that is package, deploy, and upgrade. Querying custom metadata record does not count against the SOQL limits. So you can see how easy it is to make use of these metadata types. They are similar to your custom objects or labels, but with an added advantage that you can directly deploy it without having to manually enter it, just as you were doing for custom settings. So when you were deploying custom settings, you had to manually enter the data, while here it is not at all required, right? So that's what is here.
Thank you for attending the session. I hope you all enjoyed it. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel. Also, feel free to ask your questions in the comment section below, and we will reply to them at the earliest.